Hello, everybody. My name is John Knocklinger. I'm a New Jersey divorce attorney and mediator and a men's divorce strategist. I want to talk to everyone today about the better way to get divorced. Now, I've talked a lot about how you get divorced over the years, and I feel like I can't stop talking about it because I talk to new clients every day and I learn more and more about the misconceptions out there about how the divorce process works and what you should or should not do, and sort of the misconceptions that are out in the world about divorce. So most people think, oh, wow, I need to get divorced. So what do I need to do? I need to go hire an attorney. And then my spouse needs to go hire an attorney. And then our attorneys are going to do their attorney things. And then we're going to go to court. Um, yeah, no, that is not the way that most of you need to go. And I need you to get it out of your head that that is the right way. Because there's a lot of people out there that will preach the right way. And they'll tell you this is the only way to do it. There's no other way. Don't listen to those people. So let's talk today about sort of the other options that you have. Now, I'm a big proponent of mediation. Now, what is mediation? For those of you that don't know, mediation is where a neutral third party, preferably an attorney who's experienced in divorce law, will help you and your spouse reach an agreement, take you through all of the issues that you need to discuss and reach an agreement on so that you have a total agreement on everything. And mediation does not need to happen with attorneys. Okay, so you do not need an attorney in order to enter mediation. In fact, I mediate for a lot of people who just come in, they've decided they're going to get divorced. Maybe they've talked a little bit about their divorce and what they want to do. Maybe they've talked about the parenting schedule a little bit, or they've talked about what they're going to do with the house. And they just need someone to guide them through the process. For the majority of you, and when I say the majority of you, those of you that have W-2 jobs, that have children, but you're not really fighting about the kids, you're kind of in agreement that you sort of know what you're going to do with the kids. For those of you that just have grown apart, and like there's not maybe intense emotions, mediation is really the best option for you. It's really not even close. There's really very little reason to go running to an attorney, paying attorneys $5,000, $7,500, $10,000, whatever the attorney's going to charge you for a retainer, before you try to sit down with the mediator first and see if you and your spouse can reach an agreement on everything. You'll be shocked at how many times people can just sit down, even people that don't like each other, they can sit down and they can reach an agreement on everything. It happens all the time. It just takes a commitment to doing that and not spending all of your money on attorneys. There's the old joke that you can either put your kids through college or you can put your attorney's kids through college. It's really tongue in cheek, but it's actually kind of true that most of you spend a lot of money on divorce that's unnecessary. Now, I'm not being naive here. It takes two people to be committed to the process in order to be able to go through mediation. You can't just have one person saying, I want to save money, I want to go to mediation. It takes both of you. And that is a difficult thing sometimes to get into your spouse, because some people feel like if they go to a mediator that somehow they're not going to get what they're quote unquote entitled to. Sometimes I see one party tell me that the other spouse, is very controlling and domineering and takes control of the conversation, and how can I be sure that I'll be heard and the situation is going to be fair. So you do have to understand that a trained mediator helps address all these issues, helps make sure that both parties are heard, make sure all the issues are fleshed out. But also you can always go have a 1-hour consultation with an attorney before mediation just to kind of get some advice going in, maybe what you should ask for, what you shouldn't ask for. That's entirely proper too. But you do not have to go hire an attorney and pay a big retainer just to sit down with your spouse and see what you can work out. You will be shocked at how much you and your spouse will already be in agreement on without even knowing it. You know, I do 3-hour mediation sessions. People think I'm crazy when I tell them that almost 80% of all of the people that go through mediation resolve the entire thing, everything, in 3 hours or less. They can't believe that that could be possible. But whenever you start to get on a roll and you start to talk about the issues with your spouse, probably talking about issues maybe in a way that you haven't talked about in a while, it's a momentum thing. You're like, oh, wow, we agree on that. We agree on that. Oh, well, that's not that important to me, so I'll let her have this. Oh, that's really not important to me, so I'll let him have that. It's really simple to sort of start going through the process. And all of a sudden you realize, oh my gosh, we're in agreement on 90% of the things. Then in mediation, you can spend 10% of the time on those things where you're not in agreement. And maybe there needs to be some compromise. The mediator needs to figure out a middle ground of how to get you guys done. But after the whole process, you now have an agreement or the outline of an agreement. And now all of a sudden you're paying a fraction of what you would have paid had you just gone to an attorney. So what happens when you go to attorneys? Well, attorneys have to do certain things, or at least they believe they have to do certain things, but most attorneys believe they have to do certain things, that there needs to be, disclosure of assets and liabilities. They need all kinds of information. They want to exchange information with your spouse. They want all this information so that they can feel comfortable giving you legal advice about what it is that you should settle for. And without that exchange, most attorneys don't feel comfortable giving legal advice. And, probably for very good reason. Attorneys, just like doctors and other professionals, do tend to face lawsuits from former clients who maybe just didn't get what they thought they were going to get. So attorneys tend to be a little bit more on the cautious side. And there's nothing wrong with that. And quite frankly, I don't know that most attorneys can give solid legal advice without all the facts and make sure you know all the facts. But for most of you, that's unnecessary. And let me explain what I mean by that. You have a joint bank account with your spouse. You and your spouse both work W-2 jobs, direct deposit into the account. You own 2 cars. You've got 5 credit cards. Maybe the 3 are in one person's name, 2 are in the other, but you're paying them every month out of your account. Maybe you've got 2 retirement accounts. What information do you need? I'm being serious. What information do you need? If you both have access to everything, or your spouse is willing to give you access to everything, you don't really need a lot of things. Unless you're living totally separate financial lives, you're filing separate tax returns, you're really in the dark, you don't need any kind of formal exchange of information. You just need to go in with what you know and figure out what's fair. So I talked to several people just today who were shocked that there was this other way of proceeding, that this was another avenue, because their spouse had already retained somebody, and that attorney had already told in one situation, had already given them big documents to fill out, and here's all the stuff we're going to need, and we can't even start to formulate any kind of proposal until you provide all this information, and we're going to need it all from your spouse too. And when I said, or you guys could sit down with a mediator before you do all of that, and to the extent you know all the information already, we can try to reach an agreement. It came as a shock because, again, we have all been sort of brainwashed over the years that whenever you have an issue, you just go hire an attorney. And don't get me wrong, there are situations that cannot be mediated. If you're a victim of domestic violence, unreported or reported, mediation at an early stage without an advocate is probably not a great idea. There might be some exceptions, but I'd say by and large, not a great idea. If there is a company where we don't really know much about the company or how much it's worth, or if there's any questions about the business dealings, maybe one spouse really doesn't know a whole lot about the business, maybe not a great candidate for early intervention mediation. That might be something where you do need to get attorneys involved so they can help formulate the information that you're going to need in order to reach an agreement, like help you figure out how much the company's worth, and then go to mediation later on. People that are self-employed are notoriously difficult to sort of deal with, because what's on the tax return is not what's happening in reality, right? But that is a small fraction of you guys. I would say less than 20%. For the 80% of you that, again, W-2 jobs, joint bank account, or at least bank accounts that you're willing to give each other access to, and a house and some cars and retirement account, you really don't need the platinum level legal representation. You just need somebody that can help you and your spouse talk through the issues, provide examples and suggestions of ways you might be able to resolve certain things, and then help you resolve those things. It's not complicated. I mean, the problem with divorce is that too many people make it too complicated. And the more complicated you make it, guess what happens? Shocker, it costs more. It costs more the more complicated you make it. So finding a way to make your entire divorce less complicated from the very beginning is very important. It's very important. It's far more important than being so concerned about getting what you're, quote, entitled to. Because let me tell you something. I say this all the time, but divorce is not black and white. There's a reason that attorneys even exist. It's because most of the things that we resolve in divorce are very gray. They're factor-based. I mean, alimony alone, you got 13, 14 factors. Same thing on custody and child support, although we do have a child support calculator. Distribution of assets. There's a misconception that it's automatically 50-50 in every state. No, in some states like New Jersey, it's what's called equitable distribution. So there are factors about what's fair. Obviously, in other states where it's community property, it's pretty black and white. But the reason I say all of that is that there isn't anything that you're, quote unquote, entitled to. There are things that you're likely to get, or maybe you could get, but not that you're entitled to. So it makes perfect sense to sit down with a mediator and just concentrate on what's fair. And fairness is in the eyes of the beholder, obviously. We all believe, I might think it's fair that I'm only paying $100 a week in alimony, but my spouse may think that that is very unfair and it should really be $125 a week. Yes, but grown-ups, people that really at least care about their future and wanting to make sure that they're operating in fairness, can sit down and figure this out. Because what's the alternative? The average divorce is costing somewhere between $15,000 and $16,000. I thought after COVID things would come down a little bit in cost because we could do so many more things virtually that we were not able to do pre-COVID. But it turns out still not the case. So if you go into litigation, and litigation means hiring attorneys and you're going through an adversarial process, you're going to spend a lot of money. And by the way, when I said $15,000 or $16,000, I'm talking about per spouse. It's insane. It's insane. 30 grand, 31 grand to get divorced. Or you can go to mediation and get the whole process done for probably less than what one of you needs to pay an attorney to get started. It's simple. This is not complicated. So if you're thinking about getting divorced and you're starting to go through the process, you're starting to think about what it means and what the options are, sit your spouse down. I don't care how much you hate their guts. Okay. You just found out he cheated on you. You just found out she did whatever. Put it aside. Think about all the money you're going to save and all the emotion you're not going to go through and all the time off work and all the nights for months and months and months that you're going to have to deal with this crap. Sit down with your spouse and say, We don't like each other anymore. We're getting divorced. But I don't want us to spend all of our money. Can we sit down with a mediator and talk through these issues? I mean, the worst that's going to happen is someone says no. But most people don't even ask that question. Most people don't even try to see if their spouse will sit down and figure it out, because most of you just don't know that this is even an option. Well, if you're watching this video, you know it's an option because I just told you it's an option. So no ignorance. You know it's an option. There is it's really not that complicated. Now, in terms of who do you get as a mediator, there's mediators all over the place. You do not have to be an attorney to be a mediator. So there are people that just put, a sign out and say, I'm a divorce mediator. It is important in New Jersey and every other state that you get someone who is familiar with the law. And I don't mean from the standpoint of giving you legal advice, because that is not what a mediator is going to do. But they need to be able to guide you through the entire divorce process and all the things that you need to resolve to make sure you actually talk about everything. And so someone that is, an attorney, someone who's deeply familiar with divorce law is going to be able to make sure you don't miss anything, that you actually discuss each and everything. They're also going to be in a position to fill in any gaps. I love that with kids because, you're getting divorced and your kids are, 3 and 5. Attorneys are going to be able to look forward, because they do this all the time, and say, okay, well, we need to address, pre-college expenses, AP testing, driver's education. What are we going to do with the car? What are we going to do with college? What about the senior prom? Senior prom, my kids are 5 and 3. Well, they're going to grow up. And the ideal situation is you resolve your divorce, you resolve everything that's foreseeable. An attorney's going to make sure that that happens. Someone who is a trained attorney who is now being a mediator is going to make sure that happens. So of course, I'm biased. I am an attorney. There are mental health professionals that also do mediation. Those might be good if you're having significant custody and parenting time disputes. Maybe that's somebody that would be helpful. If you are having very complicated or complex financial discussions, maybe someone's got restricted stock, or maybe you do have a closely held company, maybe you might consider an accountant as a mediator, but I wouldn't recommend that unless you have attorneys. So coming to mediation at the very beginning without attorneys, again, you're W-2 employees, you don't really have any dispute about parenting time, maybe on the edges, maybe you agree on 50-50, but how the schedule is going to be. Maybe you just need to talk about some holidays or something. But you own a house, you own some cars, retirement accounts, bank accounts that you both have access to, or you're willing to give your spouse access to. There's no reason to go hire an attorney, spend all the money, go to a mediator, save your money. You will be so thankful that you did forever, really, ever and ever. I see people constantly spend amounts of money on their divorce that make your eyes just bulge. And people think, oh, wow, well, the attorneys are just getting wealthy over this. I can tell you, speaking as an attorney, I love nothing more than getting someone done with their entire divorce very, very quickly. Because there is one truth that is true all the time. The longer your divorce goes on, the more it will cost. Period. The shorter your divorce is, the less it's gonna cost. It's as simple as that. The longer it goes on, the more it's going to cost. And by the way, the longer it goes on, the harder it is to resolve your case, because there's more things that go on, more nonsense that's said back and forth, more potential for disputes. Then people rely upon their attorneys to resolve the disputes, and instead of trying to resolve them themselves. So don't get caught up in this whole, tornado of the legal system. Unless you're in that small group of people I talked about earlier that really need to get attorneys and go through the regular process, give mediation a shot before you go to attorneys, hire them, and start spending all your money. All right, that's all I have for you today. Stay warm. I can tell you right now, in the 20 minutes I've been on, my feet are frozen and I'm inside with a heater. It is so cold. Oh my. So anyway, everybody have a, try to stay warm, and I'll see you next time.